And I came this morning and we did a little program down here, and I haven't been home yet, and I was feeling tired and kind of groggy. Ray, you're nodding. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I know you do. So I was getting tired and groggy, and then I talked to Steve, and Steve did 2 worship services this morning and had a meeting. So all of a sudden, I feel pretty good.
Yeah, you got to play with puppets.
Yeah, I got to just watch somebody play with puppets. So let's open with a word of prayer. Lord God, thank you so much for giving us this time together. Bless us. Fill us with enthusiasm and knowledge. Help us to identify with life in this other part of the world, a world that's really important to our faith. So, inspire Reverend Cramer so that his words may have meaning. Inspire us so that we may take them in and let them integrate and shape our lives. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. Steve?
Thank you for inviting me. If I stand here, am I blocking anybody? Can you see? Okay. I have a naturally very soft voice, so if you can't hear me, I'm not offended by saying speak up. I will do my best, but unfortunately, I don't have the strongest voice, so I'll do the best I can. Thank you for inviting me. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. Traveled to Israel. I have been there 6 times now. It all began in 1983 when a woman in our church in Waterford, Ohio, called me to come over, and I thought she was going to complain about something or have me do something. But what she did is she said, "Have you ever been to Israel?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Would you be offended if I paid for you and Megan to go to Israel?" And I said, "No." So that was a great blessing. So the first time we went as members of a tour group with a Presbyterian pastor by the name of Bill Harder. Since then, we've led 5 groups now to Israel, and it is just a wonderful experience. We were most recently there last October, and we are going again in October of this year. My wife and I go together. She would be here, but she is a Presbyterian pastor in Salem, and she has a funeral, which often happens with those of us in the clergy, right? So, when we go to Israel, we like to take a group of about 20 people. The reason 20 is that gives you all the discounts you can get, but it's not so big that everything just bogs down. What we think is maybe the most important part of the trip is people getting a chance to know and talk to our guide. And if you have a group of 35 or 40, which many groups are, you can't have the interaction with a guide that you can if you have a smaller group. So we do have 20 signed up to go. This year we had 20 yesterday, 1 dropped out, and another 1 dropped in this morning. So we're back to the group of 20, which is our ideal size. So we're now talking about taking a group at the same time in 2018, and that's what you have in front of you. So what is my task here? This is how I like to talk about it. It is, how would you describe what it is like to be in love to someone who's never been in love? It's not easy, because you want, there's not life experiences that the person has that you can relate to. It's a very different kind of feeling. It's a very different kind of place to be. Going to Israel is just an amazing, overwhelming experience. one of the people who went on our last tour said that going to Israel to have a spiritual experience is the same thing as going to Niagara Falls to get a drink of water. It can just literally be overwhelming. One never reads Scripture the same. Your faith gets changed, it gets deepened. There is so much that is added to your faith because it just becomes so much more powerful and real to you. So that's why we like to go. The first time we went, as I said, we were just members of the tour group. And the last day, Med and I were walking around the walls of Jerusalem, and we said, how can we describe this to other people? And our answer was, we really don't have the words. What we really need to do is bring other people so that they can experience it for themselves. And so that's what we've been trying to do. A few more opening words, and then we'll get into the slideshow. Question often is asked, aren't you afraid? What are the security concerns? I love the story of George Voinovich, who was mayor of Cleveland and then governor and senator from Ohio. But back when he was first as mayor of Cleveland, he went on a trip to Israel to promote ties between Cleveland businesses and Israel. And he was asked, aren't you afraid to go to Israel? And his response was, oh my, it's nothing like Cleveland. And there's some truth to that. Of course, there are places in Israel I've never been and I'm not planning to go. And you have to use common sense. You have to pay attention to the locals, and if they say, don't do something, don't do it. They know their country better than we do, and for us to come in as outsiders and say, oh, what do they know? That's not very right. So we trust the locals, and we've never had any experience. We've taken our own kids, which we certainly wouldn't do if we didn't feel it was safe. It's just a wonderful experience, and I'm so excited to be going back this fall. Okay, so on to the show. There you see the Western Wall, which is, of course, the most famous scene in all of Israel. It is at the base of the Temple Mount where Solomon's temple stood. Solomon's temple probably stood where that gold dome is. There are various theories, but the most likely, it was somewhere right near that gold dome, probably on that gold dome. And the reason they think it is because underneath that gold dome, which is a Muslim shrine, is a big rock. And that rock was to be the place that Abraham was to sacrifice Isaac. So it makes sense that that would be identified as the place for the temple. Unfortunately for Christians and Jews, it's also the place where Muhammad is said to have ascended to heaven to receive the Quran. So that place is now a Muslim place of worship. And all the trips we've gone before, we've been able to get inside it, but right now you can't get inside it. Okay. Okay, so Israel, if you look on the map on the left, you see the gold part, that is Israel. Or beige or gold or whatever color you call that. Right by Tel Aviv in the middle, Israel is 7 miles wide. At its broadest, it's just over 100 miles wide. So it is a very small country. If you look at the map again, from Beersheba down south is completely uninhabitable desert. So when you're talking about Israel, you're just mostly talking about the northern half of the country. Israel is the size of New Jersey. You're not talking about southern New Jersey, you're only talking about northern New Jersey. So the area that we travel in is probably the equivalent maybe of Brooke, Weir, and Columbiana counties. That's it. That's the whole, all the sacred sites, all the holy places in what would be in the United States no more than 3 counties. So the travel time from point A to point B is not very great. So we'll fly from New York to Tel Aviv, and there you see the Sea of Galilee. Beautiful rainbow. The first day, we don't provide lunches except the first day. You got St. Peter's fish. You can see the before and after pictures of the St. Peter's fish there. And that's right near Topka, which is the site of the multiplication of loaves and fishes. How do you know that a site is authentic? I think the best rule of thumb is how early is their testimony that this was a place of worship. In this case, those mosaics date back to a building from the 4th century. So if you're talking about a 4th century building, you're getting pretty close to the original events. What happened in the year 312, Emperor Constantine of Rome converted to Christianity just before a big battle. He saw a sign of a cross, and he put crosses on all the Roman shields, and they won. And the next day, no longer was it illegal to be a Christian. Everybody was, by government order, was a Christian. So from one day, he went from being an outlaw to being a Christian, just like that, because Constantine had this vision. Before that, probably why Constantine had that vision, his mother was a Christian, Queen Helena. And when her son converted, she said, okay, get me on the next boat, I'm going to Israel. And she went to Israel, and she went around and identified places as holy sites. It was very fashionable for a long time to denigrate Queen Helena and say, well, what did she know? The local Chamber of Commerce said Jesus slept here. We'll get a lot of business if we say that. So, if the emperor's mother says to build a church here, you got a lot of public jobs and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of cynicism about Queen Helena. The archaeology is becoming more and more convincing that she wasn't dumb. That she may have gotten some things wrong, but she got most things right. And we'll see that especially in Jerusalem when we get to Jerusalem. In that cave is the place that we believe that Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount. We don't know that. There's no hard and fast evidence. There is hard and fast evidence from scientists that place has the best acoustics in the area. And we did this. If you stand up in that cave and you're way down hundreds of yards away, somebody can speak in a normal tone and be heard. Shepherds have to call for their sheep. They have to call, hey, tell my wife I'm going to be home late. They have to know where communication can occur. So there's at least some reason to believe that might have been the place that Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount. It's certainly in the area. About 500 yards from there is a church called the Mount of Beatitudes. And it was built by, of all people, Benito Mussolini. Blessed are the peacemakers. Yeah, right. But Mussolini probably didn't get the right spot, but he was pretty close, I think, because this probably was the place. This is called the Jesus boat. It is not really a Jesus boat. It is a first century boat. We know the day it sunk because there are lots of Roman arrows in them, and there was a famous battle in the year 73. And the wood carbon dates to the right period. So this was sunk as part of the battle against Rome. It was at one time a fisherman's boat in the Galilee. What happened was It sunk, it got stuck in the mud, and it stayed there for 2,000 years. And then there was a horrible drought, and the Sea of Galilee, the shoreline, moved way into the center. And some amateur archaeologists uncovered this wood, and they told the authorities, and pretty soon, literally millions of dollars were spent to preserve this, because they were terrified that once they pulled it out of the mud, the wood being 2,000 years old would just disintegrate. So they filled it with polymers and all kinds of stuff. I don't begin to understand. But it is definitely a first century boat from the time of Jesus. Probably Jesus was never in it, but could have been. They built some modern boats to sort of replicate what that boat would have looked like. Included in our tour, we don't recommend that people walk on the Sea of Galilee. That's optional. Could you go back one? Oh, yeah. Okay. This is where we'll stay. First night, the Ohalo Manor is on a kibbutz, which is a collective community. We're very big in the founding of Israel. Israel's poet laureate is buried in the cemetery there. Just maybe 15, 20 yards beyond that is the mouth of the Jordan River. So it's right near the mouth of the Jordan River. And we stay in this kibbutz, which has many different buildings there. There you see the Sea of Galilee. Excuse me, I'm going to go back here. The kibbutz we stay at is Kinneret right here. There you see the mouth of the Jordan right there, so it's right near there. And then what we'll do is we'll take a trip around here to Capernaum and Bethsaida and other places. That's the Mount of Beatitudes that I mentioned, and the Jesus boat is right here. This will be really interesting to Ed, at least, for those of us who are theological professionals. This is a 4th century synagogue in Tiberias. 4th century meaning after Jesus. In the foreground, you see Abraham leading Isaac. So there's a mosaic of a classic biblical story. It's a little unusual in a synagogue to have any representations of human beings. Most of them have just geometric patterns or floral patterns, but here you have biblical characters. And you can't see very well, so at the very top, and on the right-hand side, there's a close-up of it, there's the menorah that was in the temple, and then that's a drawing of the temple in the back. So, very classic theological things. Abraham and Isaac, temple worship, the light of God, all those kinds of things. What's in the middle? Let me give you a hint. There's a Scorpio. There's it's the zodiac. So here in this place dedicated to worshiping God, there's something that shouldn't be there, and it just goes to show that theological professionals say one thing, but the people who build the church sometimes, or the synagogue, say, "Oh, hey, I want a zodiac. Here's $1,000. Do a mosaic of a zodiac." And there, in the middle of a Jewish house of worship, is a zodiac. This is Capernaum. Much of Jesus' early life is where the ministry is spent in Capernaum. This is the synagogue in Capernaum. It is actually a 3rd century building, but you can see underneath it the 1st century building. An earthquake happened between the 1st and 3rd, so it toppled and then they rebuilt it. So that is not, those stones were not there when Jesus did preaching and healing, but that building was, and that was the spot of it. So I need to go up here again, sorry. The spaceship over there is a modern Catholic church built over the house of Peter's mother-in-law. The first time we went, it wasn't there, but it's been added. I'll let you decide whether it's a good idea. That's right here. The synagogue that you saw before was right here. Here, obviously, is the Sea of Galilee. This whole area is a Franciscan run place. Those stones down there would have been from the time of Jesus. They somehow were not destroyed in the earthquake. Okay, this is Bethsaida, home of Peter, Andrew, and James, and John. The first couple of times we went to Israel, this was not known. The excavations started in 1998 from the University of Nebraska. And the funny thing that happened, this is at least a mile away from the Sea of Galilee. So it can't be Bethsaida, right? Because there's fishermen, James and John and Peter and Andrew. What would they be doing so far away, especially in those days, from the sea? Well, it turns out, as I mentioned, there were earthquakes. And the location of the sea changed over time. As earthquakes happened and land filled in. And, if you've ever been to the Outer Banks, they'll tell you, it used to be here, now it's there. Things change over time. So that's a first century buildings from the time of the disciples, and this is where at least 4 of the disciples were from. This is the city of Caesarea Philippi in the foothills of Mount Hermon. It's a beautiful place, and we'll go on to some other slides and I'll talk a little bit more about it. Okay, there you see the mouth of the Jordan River. There's 2 parts of the Jordan River, north of the Sea of Galilee and south of the Sea of Galilee. I told you our hotel was right near the southern part of the Jordan, from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. This is the northern part of the Jordan, from Mount Hermon down to the Dead Sea. Now, what I love about this place is it was right here where Jesus said to Peter, "You are the rock upon which I build this church. Even the gates of hell will not prevail against it." If you look in the lower part of the rock, there's an archway. You see it right towards the middle of the picture? That was, in Jesus' time, a temple to Pan, who was a god of the underworld, god of hell. So when Peter is standing here and Jesus said to him, "You're the rock," think of that as a rock. And even the gates of hell will not prevail against it. There's just a beautiful view of the same scene. You get more of a sense of the Jordan River as it emerges. This is the prettiest part of the Jordan River. I'll show you another part later on. We're back to the hotel where we stay in the kibbutz. Lots of good food. Okay, got to go back up again. Sorry about that. Okay, so distances, we're talking maybe 60 miles from here to here. What we're doing now, we've been to Capernaum, we've been to Caesarea Philippi up here. We're going from Cramers, which is here, through the coastal road down towards Caesarea. Caesarea is called, because there's Caesarea Philippi, this is called Caesarea Maritima, or Caesarea of the Sea. It was the largest port in the world at the time. And King Herod, who built much of what we see in Israel, was the one who built it. Herod was a master builder, and he loved to dedicate buildings to people he killed. So he got mad at his wife and he killed her. And he felt awful and he built a great shrine to her. And he got mad at his son and killed him and felt bad. And on and on. He killed thousands and thousands of people. So he had a lot of buildings. This is Mount Tabor. Traditionally, the site of the Transfiguration, it just says that Jesus went up the mount. This is in the general area. I mentioned authenticity often goes how far back were their religious observances. There are places that there were 4th century buildings here and 12th century, and the church that's there now is 19th or 20th century. That's the church, but in the foreground are the ruins of the earlier churches. So we know it was an authentic place. And of course, Jesus has this vision of Moses and Elijah on a mountain, and tradition says it's this mountain. Then we go to Nazareth. This is the Church of St. Gabriel. Again, it's either 19th or 20th century church, but it's built on the foundation of a church from Norman times, which is the 1200s, and there are remains of an even earlier building from the 4th century. So that's the pattern we want to see to make sure things are authentic. That is Mary's well. How do we know it's Mary's well? It's the only well in the area. Nazareth was a town of maybe 75, 80 people, maybe 100. It was nothing had ever happened in Nazareth before Jesus, and nothing has ever happened in Nazareth since Jesus. It's podunk here in Nazareth, and because of where I'm from, I speak of Rogers, Ohio. It's Rogers. There's this one well, and it had to be Mary's well, although it wasn't her well, it was the town's well. And it's still an active source of water for the village today, although the village now finally is 60,000, so it's a much bigger city now. Then on to Megiddo. We usually call it Armageddon. The Hebrew is Megiddo. This is a major military crossroads, which over the years, many hundreds of battles have been fought there. And so it was always thought that the final battle would happen at Megiddo or Armageddon. This is King Ahab's water tunnel, 3,000 years old. Basically what happened is that towns are always built on hills. Always, always, always. Problem is there's not always water source up here. So there's a water source down here. So what do? If the place is sieged, you can cut off water and everybody's dead within 3 days. So they covered up the water source, and then they built a tunnel from the top to the bottom. And we know from some sources that they started at both ends at the same time. And they met in the middle. And they were off. They were off about that much. But the level of technology is amazing, given this is 3,000 years ago. That is a Canaanite temple, that round temple. It's at least 4,000 years old, and maybe closer to 5,000 years old. On to Caesarea. This is a reconstruction of the Roman theater. On the side of it, there is some original elements, but most of what you see there is modern. It does have amazing acoustics. You can stand on the stage and whisper and be heard at the top level. It has to do, I think, with the Mediterranean Sea and how the winds blow and all kinds of things I don't understand. But this is where opera still take place, symphony, modern concerts take place in Caesarea. This is aqueduct. Water is everything in Israel. So you have to have sources of water. And the Romans built aqueducts all over the place. This would be 2,000 years old. This is the hippodrome. Hippos means, it's not hippopotamus, it's horse in Latin. So this is Ben-Hur. Think Ben-Hur. This is where the chariot races were. And then we'll stay in Modern Hotel in Netanya. You can see me sitting on a balcony. All the rooms have balconies looking out on the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, another trip. Let me see. Okay, so the first few days we were up around the Sea of Galilee. We've now come down to Caesarea, and Netanya, where we're staying, is right about here. We're going to go from there towards Jerusalem and Bethlehem. There's Jerusalem, there's Bethlehem. That is what Bethlehem looks like today. Bethlehem is 6 miles from Jerusalem, but it is in another governmental unit. Jerusalem is in Israel. Bethlehem is in the Palestinian Authority. So you actually go through checkpoints to go from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. This is the Church of the Nativity. If you see in the very lower left-hand corner, there's a hole in the floor. That's to reveal the 4th century mosaics. So once again, this is a place that Queen Helena built a church. It was later rebuilt by the Normans, 1100, 1200. What you see mostly is 11 and 1200. So it's only 1,000 years old, you know. You get jaded in Israel. If something's 1,000 years old, that's modern. Forget about that. There's the mosaic. You can see that hole I showed you. That's a picture. Now that is more typical of worship spaces in the early ages, non-images of people, because not wanting to make a graven image. Just geometric signs. Hold on, just a second. The church itself has been described as an architectural style called militarily defensible. This church has been the scene of many battles over 2,000 years, most recently in 1998 in the Intifada. The main entrance, you can't really see, it's way in the back, and it's about this high. And the reason is, in Crusader times, they didn't want the Arab attackers to come in on their horses so the doorway is low. Okay, that star is the spot where Jesus was born. Is it the spot where Jesus was born? Probably not. It's probably within 100 yards, one way or another. It's in the area. You see people kind of getting very emotional. When we went there was a group of Italian women who were just bursting into tears and kissing that spot. My friend's son, who is, both my friend and his son are Presbyterian clergy, he was getting really kind of sickened by what he thought was their over-emotional response until he got to the spot. And then he found tears coming down his cheeks as well. And so he didn't feel so judgmental of other people that they had the same response he did. The Word became flesh somewhere right here. Did it become right in the center of that star? Probably not. On to Jerusalem, this is the shrine of the book. This is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were first found. I don't remember the details. They were sold for like $100 initially, and now they're worth more than $500 million. Probably much higher than that. They are the oldest scriptures in existence. They come from a period of time between, I think, 200 BC and a little bit, maybe 180, something like that. They include many of the books of Scripture. They include writings of a group usually known as the Essenes. And we think that John the Baptist was probably part of the Essene community. and they come from a place called Qumran, which you'll see in a little bit. This is inside that building. It's designed to look like a scroll where the people hold the Torah. What's shown there is, I think, Isaiah 55, although it rotates which passage they show. Right outside it, there is this model of Jerusalem. That's not a great picture, but you get a sense of the size of it. It was created about 40 years ago by somebody who wanted to see what did Jerusalem look like in Jesus' time. And so he made this model all on his own over a long period of time. And it's a wonderful recreation. And most scholars think it's quite accurate. This is a close-up of the model of the temple. Of course, in Jesus' time, the money changers would have been in the far left-hand side of Solomon's portico. It's called inside only. Gentiles were only allowed in a few distant places. Women were then allowed in another quarter, and then when you got closer, only those of us who were men, the truly chosen, not to be. Right, Ed?
Right.
And inside that building is the Holy of Holies, which is where the Ark of the Covenant was until we moved to the Smithsonian Museum, if you believe Raiders of the Lost Ark. The temple was destroyed in the year 586. It was rebuilt by Herod. Again, Herod loved to build things. And it was destroyed in the year 67, I think. And I was just reading the other day about that destruction. It was at least 600,000 people were killed. So it was a horrible experience. This is where we stayed, the Jerusalem Gate Hotel. Sorry about all of the writing, all the M's ended up on the next line on all these. Very modern hotel. There's a small shopping center at the base of it, so you can get all your souvenirs. This is the Tower of David, and part of the wall of the city. One thing that gets very complicated, and it'll be really important when we get to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, is where the walls of the city are changes over time. This is part of the walls from the 1400s, but it contains some buildings that were much older than that. Some parts of the city that are in the current walls were not part of the original wall. I'll show you a slide on that later. This is some of the view from the Tower of David. The gold dome, of course, is the dome of the rock where the temple was. The silver domes in the lower left-hand side are the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the place of Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. We'll get more on that. We just actually happened on last time this wonderful, very small Armenian store, and we loved going there. This guy is an internationally known artist. His whole store is like a small room, but he has stuff that's in the White House and museums all over the world. He's a wonderful artist, so we like to go there. And he can tell us one of the three Holocaust stories of the last century, the Armenian genocide, which was horrific. There were three, in case you don't know, the Nazi Holocaust, Stalin's persecution of 18 million, and the Armenian genocide. This is the present walls up on the top are the 15th century walls, the current walls of the city of Jerusalem. So what's this here outside the walls? This is the city of David. And we'll get to another slide later that will show you about that. But David's city was actually outside the current walls, of Jerusalem. These are relatively recent, maybe last 30 or 40 years that they've been discovered, and they're well attested to as coming from the time of David. Where it says the western wall, kind of go 100 yards that, to the right of that, and that's where that last side was, the city of David. The western wall is much in the news. Right now, there's a big controversy. Do you see the 3 big green spots where green is growing on the wall? Kind of a third of the way up. Right in the middle of one of those, there's a dividing wall. The small section, that's where the ladies get to go. The big section is where the guys get to go. There is great controversy. They're trying to build a family section where men and women can go together, and that's a big political controversy right now. Actually, while we were there, there was I've got to go up here again, sorry. Right here, there is a woman holding a Torah scroll, right there. And there's another Torah scroll right here, another one right here. Women in Orthodox Judaism are not supposed to hold the Torah. So there was, the day we were there happened to be the day that there was a big demonstration, and the people on our tour went back to the hotel and they turned on BBC News, and that story was being told. So we were part of the international news that day. Okay, this is from the Mount of Olives. So this is the, if you think of the Palm Sunday view. This is looking towards the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount itself, the wall that goes the whole length of the bottom, that's maybe 2/3 of the wall to the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is all that area and more. And that was all holy. To this day, Orthodox Jews, when the Muslims permit them to come up to the Temple Mount, they will not go anywhere near that gold dome, because that's probably where the Holy of Holies was. And we don't know exactly where it was. So for fear of treading on very sacred ground, they'll go near it, but not too near it. They'll keep a distance from it. This is the Cardo. That pavement is 1st century. Jesus would have walked that. The Cardo is the main street in most Roman towns, and this was the business center of Jerusalem. And today they've used some of that ancient thoroughfare to be a modern place of business. This is the burnt house. If you look in the the upper left-hand corner, you have reconstruction of what this house looked like. It was one of the high priest's house. It was, as I mentioned, when the temple was burned down. I'm forgetting. Was it 67 or 73? I think it was 73. Yeah. In 73, Jerusalem was burnt to the ground, including the temple. And when it burned to the ground, they found this so-called burnt house. Actually, they found it. The Jewish quarter was leveled in 1948 as the War of Independence. And as long as the Jordanians had control of it, they just let it be nothing. So in 1967, when the Israelis took over that part of Jerusalem, they started building things there. And whenever you build, you will find archaeological sites. The minute you dig down, building constructors hate to lay a foundation because they know they're going to find historic finds, and then the government's going to come in and say, you can't build here. So there's a lot of covering up of ancient historical sites. When they dug this up, they found lots, and you can see signs of it today, lots of ash from the fire in 73. The Roman the Romans, Titus, the son of Vespasian. You can see the stone jars. Stone jars are very important in ritual Judaism. And I think next slide will show you the mikvah. Okay, that little bath there is a mikvah. There's very specific laws in Judaism about ritual cleanliness, taking the right kinds of bath. The water has to be running from a natural source. It can't be still. And so that is a mikvah from that first century. That's the Jewish quarter today. These are the buildings that are built on top of that. Okay, I do need to get up here again. This may be the last time. Okay, so what is Jerusalem? In 3,000 years ago, this is Jerusalem right here. That's all. And if you look at the present day walls of Jerusalem, the city of David is outside. At various times, Solomon built up to here, and then there were various walls that came and went. Nehemiah built a wall. There are all kinds of different walls. So it becomes very important in identifying the place of Jesus' death and resurrection. He was outside the city walls. And the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is right about here. So people say, that can't be the site of Jesus' death and resurrection, because it's inside the walls. But in the first century days, the walls were like this. So. We go to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial. Those are obviously shoes of people who were gassed in the Nazi chambers. It was a terribly moving experience. I do have to tell you the story of the second time we went. We took a guy who was a bus driver, school bus driver, and when we got to Yad Vashem, he said to me, "Is it okay if I stay on the bus? I don't want to go in." And I said, "Sure. Can I ask you why?" Well, it turns out it wasn't Auschwitz, but he had been involved in the liberation of 2 camps. And one of the things the American soldiers did in complete innocence is sometimes they gave young kids a chocolate bar, and it killed them because the amount of sugar just shot through their system. They saw things nobody should ever see. Talk about post-traumatic stress. And Bud said that since 1946, he has not remembered a single dream, because he made a deal with his subconscious. He said, "You can have any nightmare you want. I just don't want to know about it." But he did end up going in the museum, because he said, "I've got to show my wife what I went through, what I experienced." Now, Bud and Marge went on a second time, and the second time he went, he didn't go into the museum, but the first time he did. That sculpture is reminiscent of the barbed wires around the camp and all the people who died. Anybody old enough to remember Spiegel catalogs?
Yeah.
Okay. That's Uziel Spiegel on the left. His parents were Holocaust survivors. They saw a Nazi guard throw their son up in the air and catch him with a bayonet. And so when Israel wanted to build a memorial to the children, the 800,000 children, whatever it was, who died in the Holocaust, they said, "Send us a bill, we'll write a check." And there's this wonderful children's museum, which you go into this very dark area, and there are a few candles, and mirrors are set up so that those 6 candles are reflected hundreds of thousands of times. And as you walk through this and see all these lights, they slowly read the names, and it takes over a year to read the names of all the children who died in the wilderness. We hope to have a chance. One of the spiritual traditions is to get your hands dirty to plant the tree, and we hope to be able to do that. This is right under the Mount of Olives, the Kidron Valley. This is a wonderful church. This is a modern building that I absolutely love. I'm not a great fan of much modern architecture, even though my father's profession was an architect. But this was built by, anybody ever heard of John D. Rockefeller? He built this church on a very ancient site. That it is the Garden of Gethsemane. And it has beautiful mosaics. And it's a very dark and somber place. You can see the rock where Jesus went to pray. And more on that later. Okay, these are living witnesses to the resurrection. I'm not a botanist, don't ask me to explain this, but the way that olive trees grow is you just keep getting more and more and more shoots off the same trunk. So one dies and another one comes. They're very mangled things. You can see that one on the right is very twisted. These are over 2,000 years old. So when Jesus went to pray, those trees were witnesses to the prayer. Gethsemane means olive press. There is an olive press there. But here in this place where olive trees grow, the foot of Mount of Olives is where Jesus went. This is my favorite gate. My name is Stephen. This is St. Stephen's Gate. Although it's not named for a good reason. It's named St. Stephen's Gate because that's the last place he went before they stoned him to death. It's always a little somber to be named after somebody who was the first martyr. If you see on the gate, just to the left, up about halfway up the wall, there's some lions. It's also called the Lions Gate. In 1967, this was where the Israelis entered Jerusalem. And so it's a very memorable place. But there's there and elsewhere, there's plenty of bullet holes. This is the pool of Bethsaida where Jesus healed it. It's hard to get a perspective. You're dropping down about 35 feet there. So you're way above the pool. What happens is, here's the place in the first century, an earthquake happens and it lands on it. Somebody builds a building on top of that. Another earthquake happens. A war happens and they tear down things. Then another layer. So what is street level in Jesus' day is 20 or 30 feet below what's street level today, sometimes, depending on where you are. So there's the Via Dolorosa, the way of the cross. That's way above the actual place. It's about the side of Jesus' walk, but it's way above. This is the Via Dolorosa today. You're walking through the bazaar. They will be very happy to sell you all kinds of things there. Off to the side is the Chapel of the Flagellation, and those stone pavements there on the right are from Jesus' time. And there's even some markings on them, and there's at least a theory that the soldiers played a game. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. You can't get a view of it from the ground. There are no street level shots of it because you go through these winding paths and you just kind of pop into it. You never get to see it from a distance, except from above. This is definitely where Jesus died. This is where Jesus was buried. This is where Jesus was raised. People don't want it to be the site, and I'll get into that a little bit, but it absolutely is. There's to me, incontrovertible evidence. It is today run by the Syrian Orthodox, the Ethiopian Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox, the Coptic Orthodox, the Catholic, and I'm forgetting one other. 6 different Armenians, 6 different denominations. Do you think if in Cove Church there were 6 denominations trying to have worship upstairs, how would that go, Ed?
A little confused.
Yeah. There have been known to be fist fights because your service is taking too long. We have this chapel reserved from 2 to 3, and it's 2:15, and you're still worshiping. Get out of here. So, by law, not of anybody else, by church law. Let me repeat that. By church law, by agreement of the church, no Christian has owned the keys to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre for 1,500 years. Why? Because if the Ethiopian Orthodox had it, the Greek Orthodox would never get in. If the Armenians had it, the Catholics would never get in. So there is a family called the Nusebe family, which since I think it's 586 or something like that, the keys to the holiest place in Christianity have been by the insistence of Christians in Muslim hands, because we can trust the Muslims, we can't trust each other. Talk about the place where Christ's body was broken. Christ's body is still broken there. And then we'll return to the Jerusalem Gate Hotel. Very nice place. The next day we go to the Dead Sea, the lowest place on earth. You see the box at the top, Qumran, that's where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Go down to Masada, a very famous place in Jewish history. When we think of wilderness, we tend to think of trees and growth. In Israel, wilderness is rocks, and some more rocks, and a few more rocks, and probably some rocks. That's the wilderness. That's the road that the guy was on when he got mugged, and the Samaritan came along. That's the road, the wilderness. This is the Jordan River. This is the place where Jesus was baptized. At this place, the Jordan River is widest from me to Ed. That's the Jordan River. Now, part of that is due to damming and irrigation and other things. So at one time, the Jordan River would have been more. But right now, it's this small, sleepy little creek. Maybe 2 feet deep in most places. This is Masada, another place that Herod built. I'll try to tell it really briefly. The last place in Jewish resistance was Masada in the year 132. For 3 years, the Romans sieged it. You can see Roman camps around there. They built a ramp up at the end of 3 years to finally end the Jewish rebellion. And the way they built the ramp is they had Jewish slaves build it, so that if the Jews on top killed people who were building the ramp, they were killing their brothers and sisters. And when the Romans finally got on top, they found that all the people there had committed suicide. But they did not want to fall in the hands of the Romans, because they would be humiliated. And so for a long time, all Israeli military inductions happened on the side. And the phrase is never again. You can see on the lower right-hand corner, you can see the ramp that the Romans built up. You see the Dead Sea in the background. You see the cart that you take up, the trolley that you take up to the summit. Get to float in the Dead Sea. It is 10 times saltier than the Pacific or the Atlantic. You cannot swim it. It's impossible. This is Qumran. The lower left-hand corner, that little cave there, is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Back to the Jerusalem gate. The last day is in Jerusalem. Once again, we're on the Mount of Olives looking into the city. Okay, last time. This is the main entrance to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And there you see tourists going in. This is the very elaborate shrines here, which are too much for a lot of Protestants, so they don't like it. It's too much, too many icons, too much stuff. Calvary is right behind here. This is authentically determined to be a first century tomb. The actual tomb of Jesus was in the main part of the building. This is the stone of unction where his body was laid out, and there's been March or April there were some major discoveries around that. And here's probably the most important part. Scientists have determined by whatever they do to test these things that this is a first century drawing. And it says, "Lord, here I come." And it is on the site of the very first church in the world. And if it was first century, they would have known where Jesus died. They would have known where he was buried. They would have known where he was raised. Unfortunately, we've been there 6 times. I've only seen that painting once because it's way down in the basement, and you have to find the right Armenian Orthodox clergy person to let you go down and see it. They don't let. I've tried ever since. That was, I think, the first or second time we went, and never been able to get back there. But there's lots of documentation of it. If you look up on the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is it. This is everything to Christians. It is where everything important happened. It is the holiest of holies for Christians. It is where we remember everything. And so the whole Christian world comes here. And so it's very crowded. It's hard to maneuver around. You'll find people worshiping in multiple languages. It's very confusing. You'll even find, as I said, someone fighting over whose turn it is to worship where, when. But it is the place, there's just no doubt. It is 100% on that. This is a relatively modern church built over Caiaphas' house, and in the basement you can see where Jesus was held as a prisoner. This is Hezekiah's tunnel, which is from the old city of David down to the pool of Siloam. And it again is an amazing feat of architecture, the way they carved it out in the stone. Room of the Last Supper. I've told you about several places that I think are unquestionably authentic. This, I can guarantee you, is not authentic. It's a 14th century or 13th century building. There's no evidence of anything before then on the spot. It's currently a mosque. And there's nothing that testifies that that is the place of the Glen, except that it was within a couple hundred yards in one direction or another. This is the one piece of interest in that room. It's a sculpture of pelicans. The ancients misunderstood what pelicans were doing. They were regurgitating their food to give to their children. But the way it happened, it looked to them like they pricked their own blood and gave that to their kids. And so that became a symbol of the resurrection, just as Jesus gave his blood for our sake. The pelican became a very ancient symbol for the resurrection. This is the place where Protestants like to go. In 1890 or 80, General Gordon found this wonderful place that looks like, it does look like a skull, a hill that looks like Golgotha, the skull. They found ancient tombs, unquestionably ancient tombs, and they were so excited because then they didn't have to go back to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre with all its mess. They could celebrate the resurrection in a nice, quiet, peaceful Protestant place. The problem, archaeologists came along and said, we have great news. This is a really authentic ancient tomb. It's from about 450 years before Jesus died. Where was Jesus buried? In a tomb where no one was ever laid. They would not have built the tomb 450 years before Jesus died and then not used it for 450 years. Tomb space in Israel would have been used over and over and over again. So that can't be the place. It is an authentic place. It's a beautiful place. We go there because it's where we like to remember the resurrection. It's much more peaceful and calm. So when we celebrate communion, we usually do it in the Garden Tomb, even though we know it's not the place. It's just much more conducive to communion than the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Back to the hotel. For those of you who are Cleveland Indians, our last night there, we listened at breakfast as the Chicago Cubs beat the Indians in the seventh game of the World Series. And then we come home. You can see the signs to the airport in English, in Hebrew, in Arabic, and that would be typical everywhere in Israel. Everywhere you have road signs, they'll be in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. The psalm teaches us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and so we do. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for your holy land and for your holy people and for the wonderful gift of Jesus Christ who came to offer to us life and salvation. Be with us and bless us as we bear witness to his love. Amen. Thank you. Are there any questions before we get to the important business? Yeah. All right, enjoy the cookies.
Oh gosh, so wonderful, so interesting. Can I get a picture of you two gentlemen in front of us?
I've got to get it. I've got to move it.
No, I mean, can't we get a picture of you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
After you get it over.
Oh, okay.
Because I was saying something beautiful behind you. And talk about sugar overload. With all kinds of trees. I want to thank everybody that came, and especially for all your help setting up and all your delicious goodies back there. Very much appreciated. And this man, wow, what do you say? One more hand.